Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can see it's clearly.
So in our last class we discussed the so to do justice basic introduction and also one of the principles was practice, also discussed encapsulation. So today we will discuss just two of the other principles of growth, inheritance and polymorphism. These are the two that so today's class will won't take much time.
Sorry, Kende. Sorry, Kende, sorry. Can you guys hear him properly? Because I think he's breaking up and coming in and out. Kende, I think you're coming in and out. Are you using an earpiece?
Yes, I'm using an earpiece.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe you can try adjust it properly, or maybe I don't know. It's like you're coming in and out. You're breaking up.
Let me just disconnect the
Let's give him a couple of seconds to adjust his mic.
Is it better now? Can you hear me now?
Very audible. It's okay now. It's okay now.
Okay, so as I said in the last class, we discussed the basic introduction to principles of OP, and we, as I rightly said in the last class, we have 4 principles of OP, which are we have encapsulation, we have inheritance, we have polymorphism, and also abstraction. So in the last class, we already discussed encapsulation, which also took us to some discussion on properties, right? So in today's class, we'll be discussing inheritance, right? So inheritance is a procedure in which one class inherits the attributes and method of another class. I think some of us did basic biology, we learned about inheritance, right? In genetics, right, where you inherit some traits or behaviors of your parents. So it's also the same thing in programming, right? So inheritance simply implies that a class inherits the attributes and methods of another class. So in C#, it is possible to inherit fields and methods from one class to another. So we group the inheritance concept into two categories. Right. So the inheritance concept in C# is grouped into two categories, which is derived class and the base class. Okay. So but before we go into that, inheritance allows programmers to create classes that are built upon existing classes. That is, for example, you have a class and you have another class, right? But you notice that there are some traits or properties or methods that are in the new class you are creating that already exist in a class you already have. So instead of rewriting those properties again or rewriting those methods again, you can just inherit from the previous class and automatically the new class, which in this case now will be the derived class, we have the traits and attributes of the parent class or the already existing class. So to specify a new implementation while maintaining the same behavior, to reuse code and to independently extend original software via public classes and interfaces. Okay, so inheritance can be in two forms. You can inherit from a class and you can also inherit from interface. Okay, but in this class now, we are just limiting ourselves to inheriting from a class. So as I said the other time, I said inheritance is basically categorized into two, which is derived class and the base class. So the derived class, a class that inherits from another class, is called derived class. Okay, so when you have a class that inherits from another class, that class that is inheriting from the other class is called the derived class, or you can also refer to it as a child class. Then the class that is being inherited from is referred to as the base class, right? So, and to inherit from the class, we use the column sign, okay, in C#. We use the column sign to indicate that a class is inheriting from another. So, let me just quickly show that through this. So we have a class called vehicle, and we have another class called car. In the vehicle class, we have a property called brand. Okay, and we also have a method called on, right? That is how the horn of the vehicle sound. Now, the car class inherits or implements colon sign. The colon sign followed by the class from which, the name of the class from which it implements. Okay, so in this case now, the vehicle class is the base class and the car class is the derived class, is the child class. Okay, and now in the child class, we have a property called model name. Okay, now how do we use this? So in this code now, we are creating an instance of a car class. Okay, and you notice we call the method mycar.on from that car class. All right. But if you look at this code here, you notice that the car class does not have a method called on, but the method is in the parent class. So, but because this class, it can make use of this method without explicitly defining it here. Okay, that is called reusability. That is, you are able to reuse a class, reuse a method that already exists in the parent class. All right. So if we let me just quickly run this now. We are calling the UNC class now. I mean the UNC method. You can see the UNC method has been executed. And also, we also console log the brand name and also the model name. Okay, the brand name now is, you can see the brand name is Ford. And this Ford is coming from the parent class because it was only, this property was only declared in the parent class. All right. So we have the, which is the brand name here, and the model name, which was declared in the derived class itself, is also being called. So we have Ford Mustang. Okay? So that's just the basic concept of inheritance. So it gives room for reusability and also in code maintenance. Okay, you won't need to do your code around. Once it's been implemented in a place, you can actually reuse it across your code base. Okay. So why and when to use inheritance? Okay. Why do we use inheritance, and when we use inheritance? It is useful for code reusability, as I said earlier. If you have a block of code and you want it to be reused across board, or you have some properties or traits that are common to other classes that you have in your code. So instead of just littering the properties all around in your code, then you can just keep it simple and easy to maintain by using inheritance. As you can see now, the child class here, the child class is clean and just simple, right? Because it's making use of methods that are already in the base class. Then also reuse fields and methods of an existing class when you, okay, we use this and also we reuse this method. Okay? So that is just a basic advantage of inheritance. Then we have a keyword called sealed with C#. Okay, because there are instances where you don't want a class to be inherited from. Okay, there are instances where you just want the properties of a class, the method of the class to only limit to that class. Okay, so if you want to prevent a class to be inherited from, what you just do is you put the keyword sealed. Okay, once you use the keyword sealed, please you can mute your mic so that the background noise will not be. So we can use you use the keyword sealed to prevent a class to be inherited from. So if you don't want other classes to inherit from the class, you use this sealed keyword. So when you use the sealed keyword, if you try to inherit it from a class, for example, if I call this a sealed class now, if I use the keyword sealed, Okay. Yeah, sorry. So if I use the keyword sealed now, you can see um, this is showing a restriction line saying that a car cannot derive from sealed type vehicle. So because this has been declared as a sealed type, then this car class cannot inherit from it. So that's how you prevent your class from being inherited from. Yeah, we have some samples of classes that are sealed class in the .NET framework. Okay? So we can see there are lots of. All right. So having discussed that, we move to the next one, which is polymorphism and overriding method. Okay? Polymorphism from the word poly. Okay. So poly means something that is plenty. Then morphism simply means taking different forms. Okay. So when we talk about polymorphism, it means a method or a class. It means a method that is having different forms. Okay. A method with the same name, but it has different forms. So for inheritance, what we use to override a method that is already in a parent class, which we want to override. Take, for example, let's say we have a unique, we're actually going to get to that. We have a unique method in this class that still use the name, that also uses the same method. Okay, how do you override it in the child class? So that's what we'll be discussing now. So polymorphism means many forms. It occurs when we have many classes that are related to each other by inheritance. Okay, like we specified in previous class, inheritance lets us inherit fields and methods from another class. Polymorphism uses those methods to perform different tasks. This allows us to perform a single action in different forms. Okay, so now, for example, a very good example of a polymorphism is what we have in this class. So I'm going to be using this sample code to explain this. We have a class animal, right, with a method public void animal sound. Okay, so we have this method animal sound, and also we have a class pig. Okay, from the previous explanation, this colon sign followed by the name of a class denotes that the pig class inherits or implements the animal class. So by default, every attribute or properties of the animal class can be accessed, okay, can be accessed by the pig class. Please remember the modifiers that we discussed in the last class, right? Where we discussed the identifiers now, which are the public, the private, the internal. Okay, I think we have 4 that we discussed in the last class. So so for a class that is inherited from another class, you know when and how they can access the parent properties and fields. So we don't need to go into that again. So for this now, we have a pig class that implements the animal class. All right. And also in the pig class, we have the same method, public void animal sound. Okay, which ordinarily should write to the console that the pig says we. All right. Now, we also have a dog class. Okay. The dog class also implements the animal class because they are related, they are all animals. Okay, so we have a public class. We have the same method in both parent and the derived class. All right. Now, when we now create instances of these classes, when we create the instances of these classes, we have the first one is we have an instance of the animal class. Okay, we all have instance of the animal class, but the instances differ. For example, the first one is we have the instance of the animal class. The second one, we have the instance of the pig class. Okay. Now, you know, a very good thing about inheritance is the fact that you can set the new instance of the derived class to the parent class. Okay, what I'm saying in essence is that you can see we have animal. Okay, we are casting the instance of a pig to animal. We are also casting the instance, we're also creating an instance of a dog to animal. Okay, this is possible because the pig class and the dog class inherit from the animal class. Okay, so that's why we can do this. Or you can create an instance of the parent class to the child class. Please take note of that. Take for example, you can say pig equals to, you can't say pig equals to my pig. I mean, you can't say pig, my pig equals to new animal. Okay, the reason is because it's a parent. The animal is a parent class to the pig class. But this is possible now because the pig and the dog class, they are derived or they are child class to the animal class. Okay. So having taken note of that, now we have the instance of the animal class, instance of the pig class, and instance of the dog class. Okay, so and for each of them, we are calling this method animal sound. Okay, so let's see what our output will be. Let's see what our output. Okay, so we have three instances, we have three responses of the animal make sound. Okay, so we have the animal makes a sound 3 times. Okay, so I want us to take note of something here. When we created the instance of animal, okay, this instance of animal should give this particular response, right? Then the my pig dot animal sound should give this the pig says we, that should be what we should have here. Okay, also that of dog too, dog, because each of them have the same method. All right, should also give this, but this is not happening in this case now. Why? Because what the compiler is doing is that since we already have a concrete method here, and all the derived class inherits from this. So it's just giving the output of the implementation of that method in the parent class. Okay, that is what we have for all. That's why we have this here. Now, for this to give us what we expected or what we want to see, okay, that's why we are going to be using the word override. Okay, but before you can override a method in the parent class, you need to create that method as a virtual method. Okay, I'm going to call this virtual. Okay, what do you mean by virtual? Okay, from virtual literally means something that is not concrete. Okay, it means it is abstract. So that means on the compiler, we won't have a concrete implementation of this class, of this method. You just see it as a virtual class, as a virtual method. So when something is virtual, it means it is not real. Okay, it is not real. So we won't have the real implementation of this. So such that when we now want to implement it in the new class, in the new classes, if you want to use that same method, okay, we can easily override it. Okay, so we are going to use the word override here in the derived classes. We're going to use the word override. Okay, and also use the word override. Okay, so when we use the word override, it will override the method in the it will override the method in the parent class. Okay, it's going to override the method in the parent class such that we can now have our implementation in the class that is deriving from the parent class. Okay, the reason for this is because we can have a method that is generic across board, but it still differs based on what the method is doing in each of the classes. Okay, for example, animals make sound, right? But the way pig makes sound is different from the way dogs make sound. Okay, the animal makes sound is a generic method for all animals. Okay, so we need to now limit the way each animals make sound, and we should be able to implement it in each animal class, which is why we use the word override. So that it is overriding the animal sound that we have in the parent class. And also we use the word virtual to ensure that this method can be override by any of the class that implements this class. Okay, so that is that. So if you now run this again now, so now we can see each classes have their own implementation of the animal sound. Okay, each classes have their own implementation of animal sound. So that is how we override methods that we wish to override in the parent class. And if we don't override this method in another class, okay, and we just use the method directly, it will explicitly use the implementation of that method in the parent class. Okay, so let's say, for example, we have another class called let's say growth that implements animal. So, and we now have let's say we just have instance of code. And we have quotes, and I have goods, animals. Okay. So if you run this now, you discover that the my goat just takes the implementation of that method in the parent class. The reason for that is because it does not explicitly give its own implementation. So it did not override that method. And because the method wasn't overridden, it will just use the implementation, the generic implementation that we have in the parent class. Okay, so that is that on inheritance and polymorphism. So maybe in the next class we'll discuss on abstraction. Okay, we'll talk on we'll discuss abstraction in the next class. So I don't know if you have any question from anyone. Hello. Hello guys, are you with me? Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay. So
Yeah,
I'm asking if we have questions from anyone. We've come to the end of the class. Don't be surprised. So I just make it simple and basic, just to introduce us to concepts. We can do more research, and also feel free to ask your questions.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your presentation, sir. So thank you very much. And also, if there's any questions, or maybe when others try to watch the video, so we are going to get back to you, sir.
Okay, that's fine. So on our own, I'll just give us this simple assignment. There are instances where you use a new keyword in a derived class to override a method. Okay, so I'll employ us to read on that, because that's where we'll be starting the next class before I explain the last concept, which is abstraction. But I just want us to read on that first. The use of the new keyword in a method that is being inherited from by a derived class. So just do it bit. I think maybe 10-15 minutes you have gotten some materials online or saw some materials online that explains that. Then I will just do a brief further explanation of that before we discuss the last concept, which is abstraction. So thank you very much, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. I think we have less than 1 minute. Concerning the assignment, I would really appreciate if you can just help us type it and send it to us so that I can forward it to others.
Okay. I will drop it on this.
Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate your coming. So good night, sir.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.